Well, the pumpkin has been sitting for about a week and we are back at it. There are several options for waterproofing and sealing, which is your next step. This step is absolutely critical, I will say, because the bane of all this paper mache is moisture. If it gets in here, you're going to get mold growth, you're going to get all sorts of decay and rot, so you really want to make very, very certain that you take the effort to make sure this thing is as sealed as you can possibly get it. There are a number of products that work incredibly well as waterproofers. My personal favorite is some sort of Spar Varnish. Yeehaw. Fantastic stuff. It soaks into the paper and it makes it pretty damned water repellent. If you're not a big fan of that, there are other commercial products that work out very well. Drylock is a masonry waterproofer used for the bottom of pools. Also good stuff, but I have used the Spar Varnish for a very long time. I will be using this for the inside of the pumpkin because it needs a white coat. But otherwise, I recommend using Spar Varnish for the outside. There are other techniques you can use. I have seen one person use pavement sealing, kind of that black tar pitch to seal their pumpkin. I'm sure it's excellent. I did not personally have great luck with it, I believe because I didn't mix this stuff correctly. So we're going to give our stuff a coat of Spar Varnish, possibly a few coats of Spar Varnish, depending on how I feel. So I want to make sure it's good and mixed up. I bought a gallon about 8 pumpkins ago. This thing has lasted. You do not need a ton. I probably have 60% left. Spar Varnish, when you're painting with it, is kind of thin and runny. So expect it to drip down, and it's perfectly great to let it soak in. Please do. The one thing that will happen with it is if you're painting on areas where it is liable to run down, such as the edges of your teeth, what it will do is it will run down, it will form a little droplet. That droplet's outside will harden. The inside of it will remain liquid, and that will leave you kind of a little varnish bomb waiting to be detonated the next time you bump against it wrong. So be careful when you paint that you've got little drips running down. Try to get rid of those drips if you can. They are somewhat inevitable, but otherwise avoid where possible. And this stuff, when it spreads on, practically spreads on just like water almost, a little bit thicker. But your goal here is to obviously slather it all over the place and get it to sink in. Because once this stuff sinks into paper and soaks into it, my God, is it just absolutely water repellent. It is best to paint a little bit, let it dry, then paint a little more, let it dry. The inside is incredibly tricky because there will be areas where your hand sometimes simply cannot reach. And you've got to watch out for your kind of bottom hole there to make sure you get around the edges of it and you get the inside thoroughly. It is an area where the dry lock or other sealing paints can be more effective because you can really see where it isn't, and Spar Varnish is not the best for that. But if you're really feeling that you want your project super waterproof, there is absolutely no law whatsoever saying you can't go back over it with another sealant after you do the first. And again, the sealing phase really, really is important for a project like this. God forbid any of my students are watching, they will remember the vocabulary term hydrophobic. If you will be keeping your pumpkin indoors, this step is not as critical, but if you are anticipating any kind of outdoor exposure, really seal the bejesus out of it. Another area where it's really crucial is around the teeth or any spots where you still have your paper, that is the original newspaper, exposed to it. Especially where the newspaper has been cut and it's kind of a fanned out section of paper bits. I've done a very good job of closing all the gaps on the teeth for this one, so I don't have any, but occasionally you get lazy and you encounter one. This is basically the undercoat sealant, and what we're going to do is after this is applied over the entirety of the pumpkin, we're going to give kind of a base colored coat, white if you want it very, very orange, and black if you want it more dark and mottled. I'll be using the black for this one. And then when that is all said and done, I usually give that another layer of Spar Varnish, just to double up on my waterproofing. I am incredibly fastidious about it because during my display I have had it pour down, and I want to make sure that my pumpkins are always in excellent, excellent shape. I don't ever have to want to sacrifice any to the garbage bin because of poor sealing. You might also encounter a spot where the paper has peeled back and away from the project. There is a little divot right here where my paper hasn't completely covered. That's an area to really watch out for, because if you don't fix that, water can pool in that area, and it won't matter how really well waterproofed it is, you have a risk area. So what I do is I just peel that section away. It's more trouble than it's worth. Nobody's going to see it after it's all super waterproofed and painted. So get rid of any areas where the outer paper towel layer is no longer adhered right to the surface of the project. Don't leave yourself a cavity for water to enter. Big ornate stems pose a problem for waterproofing because it's hard to get all the way around them. So what we'll be doing is kind of painting the top area anywhere with the exposed surface. Then when we flip this thing over to do the bottom, watch for the bottom of your stem. Alright, that's pretty well sealed initially. We're going to let this dry, then I'll flip it over. We'll do the inside, and then we'll do the bottom. Probably best in that order. Just again, make sure that if you do your teeth, if you've got teeth, make sure you don't get any little build-up bubbles at the base of them. Yay, alliteration. Alright, I'll see you when the sucker's dry. First part's dry, time to do the rest. And doing the inside can be a real pain in the tuchus. Another technique that can work if you got to get on the inside is grab yourself just a little cup of some sort, scoop up a little bit of your paint, drop it in, and then slosh it around. I'm not going to do that with this one, I don't think, because reasons. Another step that can be handy is to do the back side of the face, then grab a small bucket, like hey, a small bucket. Put the face down over it and just let it drip and drain, because it's going to leak out through the face holes. There's not a lot you can do about that. And especially if you want to be thorough, you're going to want to really slather in there. So. And if you've got loose pieces that are just sticking up and out, rip them off. They will block where the paint is supposed to be going, or where the sealer is supposed to be going. If you are being super cool and using a bucket and you're painting like this, never paint down near the edge. This Spar Varnish had a tendency to run down. What will happen is it'll run down into the crack between your bucket and your pumpkin, and it will harden there and form a line. So paint well above it and wait until later on when you can come back and it has a long distance to travel. Don't leave that to chance, or you'll get a nice little "I left this here to dry" mark when you come back sometime. And that has never happened to me before, ever. Swear to all the gods. Aha! Another spot. I see spots up here that weren't hit when I initially did the outside. It's a good time to get it. Whenever you're flipping your pumpkin around to paint different areas, take full advantage of the spot. The areas that you couldn't see on a previous flip are now more exposed. I guarantee you, you will miss something somewhere. And if you see a spot where you previously painted that looks kind of dull on the pumpkin, you can just go back over that, because after the Spar Varnish sealing, everything should look pretty damn shiny. If you get any spot that looks a bit dull and you still got a wet brush, just give it another extra slather. Won't hurt anything to be a little bit more protected. Alright, we'll let this dry, come back, do more!